collectibles that is otherwise more or less useless, and I'm going to convert it into a massive furniture stockpile. I don't really have a whole lot of use for most of the furniture I'll create. It just takes up a lot of space, jams up my workshops, and so forth. Someone was asking if I need to unmark my trade items. Yes, sort of. You can leave them up there. It won't hurt anything. They'll just stay in the depot. I'll show you how to do that here in just a brief moment as soon as I get this finished here. Notice the goods that we marked for trading are still available for trading. If you turn them off, they'll go back to their stockpiles. People will come along and haul them just like the goods that you just purchased, and so everything will get moved down to the stockpiles that you care about. What you're going to see is people coming along, closing out those workshops and getting rid of them. You're going to see them move the items from the workshops, the barrels and so forth, downstairs. And once I get a stockpile for it all, and then at that point we'll have everything underground where we want it. Ah, here's our warning. Warm stone located. Now, normally what that means is that we've approached. We haven't dug into, but we've gotten next to a source of magma. What's probably happened is this happens to be adjacent to the magma area we created earlier, and because it is, it warms up all the stone around it, leading to a situation where dwarves digging on the level above or below it will cancel jobs and go, oh, cap, we're getting ready to dig into a volcano or a hidden magma pipe, and they'll stop doing those jobs. If you get a cancellation about damp or warm stone, you're going to want to verify where it happened and then look and say, hey, look, my dwarves are canceling jobs because the magma on the level above this one is marking all the stone as warm, even though it's not really warm stone. They'll cancel a bunch of jobs. That's okay. Let them cancel them. We'll go back and we'll dig this floor out properly later once it's all warm. You'll notice as the magma has begun to fill that room that the actual progress it's making as it continues to spread out slows down even more. Sometimes I get the magma to start stacking up in that room at level 3 fairly quickly. Sometimes it gets to about halfway across that room and stops. It depends on time of the day, phase of the moon. I've had it fill this entire chamber with just the 3 wide input before, and sometimes I haven't. It depends. Now, what I don't want to do here is immediately hit Shift F8, because the last time I used Dig Circle, it was a 31 wide circle, remember? I do, however, want to dig that stone out, so we're going to go ahead and mark it. The dwarves will come back through, they'll mine out one more layer and go, oh my god, more warm stone, and they'll freak out and cancel a bunch more jobs again. Alright, our wood stockpile is starting to get to where we need to be. Let's start in on the bin patrol and the beds. Wooden bins make excellent storage containers for most non-food items. They are lightweight, easy to move, and they contain as much as every other type of bin. Yes, they are flammable. Do not let them touch magma or fire. However, they are by far the most beneficial bin-type storage item. They can hold lots of stuff. They don't add as much weight as a metal bin would. Whenever possible, you're going to want to make your bins out of wood. However, wood is also the only material you can use to make beds, so be careful that you don't use all of your wood making beds. Now, one thing we do need to have is we've had several of our training axes incinerated along the way, so we're going to go ahead and make some training axes as well. That way we've got some spares in case, you know, another wildfire comes through and burns all our wood again. That would never happen though, right? Guys? Okay, and now that they've got that first set of furniture built up, it's time to actually make this into a room. As with the bedroom on the upper floor, you have to designate it as a room or it doesn't count. Now, there's several options you can get into here. In particular, there's the meeting hall option. I generally leave that off. If you assign your room, your dining room as a meeting hall, your dwarves will start throwing parties. When dwarves are partying, they are not working, and right now I don't have enough dwarves to sacrifice a bunch of them to a party. At this point, all work and no play, and I don't care if they're all dull boys. Someone was asking about setting traps. It's about 8:40 now, and I'm going to run for at least another hour and 20 minutes. It's possible I will get to traps tonight. I will probably almost certainly get to curtain walls and bridges. If you want to stick around and hang out, great. But if you've got to go, don't worry. Twitch will hold on to the video, and I'll be uploading it to YouTube later. In the room display, you'll notice that we now have decent quarters, which is our dormitory, and decent dining room. That's our little crude stonework dining room here. That'll get us a decent thought, basically, a decent level thought for people eating in our dining room. As our dining room improves in quality, you will actually move people further up the ladder of happy thoughts because they're constantly eating in the dining room and getting good thoughts from it. Okay, and that takes care of that. The magma has reached the outer chambers. We may get lucky. It may decide it's going to fill up tonight, but if it doesn't, we'll make a magma tap. Doesn't look like it's advancing very quickly into those rooms, though, and there's a lot of evaporation going on in the main chamber. Oh yeah, liaisons. Okay, let's talk liaisons. Liaisons will come and meet with your outpost leader. I didn't really cover the outpost leader, but in the nobles section, you'll see that the dwarves appointed themselves an expedition leader here, our mine worker, Iton, yeah, him. He's our leader. So at some point, he got idle for just long enough for our outpost liaison from the Dwarven Mountain Home to come along and go, hey, let's talk about your settlement here. He's going to ask us about what we want to have them export to us. That's this screen here. He's going to talk about what they will offer for our exports in the next caravan, and at some point down the road, not initially, not probably in the first couple of years, they're going to say, "Hey, wow, your settlement's doing really well. You want to be a barony? You want to be a duchy? Do you want to, have nobles, that you don't already have?" And we'll have to decide whether we want to be considered part of the mountain home or a separate, isolated colony for a while longer. One thing you want to be careful of is, as far as I know, and I don't think it's been fixed in this version yet, some of the other players out there may be aware, I don't know, but it used to be if I requested, for example, cougar leather or silk cloth is a good one. Let's say I say, hey, I want lots of silk cloth, it's a high priority item for me. They will bring 4 cave spiders silk cloth, and that's about it. Basically, I'm demanding how many, and this is instead of saying, hey, I want you to bring as much as possible, it just says, hey, I want you to make sure you bring 4. I don't know if that's been fixed. It was supposed to be a kind of priority where I could kind of adjust what they bring, but generally speaking, if I were to say, hey, bring all these iron bars, he'll bring me a few iron bars, and then that's it. He'll have them. It guarantees that he will have them. He will charge me a higher price for them, and he will only bring a few. Generally speaking, I don't mess around with creating an import order at this time. I just let it go by defaults, and whatever they have, they have. Now, notice my dogs are attacking my puppies. What's going on there is my animals are overcrowded. This is a thing you can get into with your animals. Remember, we created this pasture right here. We jammed all our dogs into it, and we kind of walked away and forgot about them. Yeah, that works right up until there's too many dogs in that pasture, and then they start attacking one another because they're getting overcrowded all the time. And so we're going to fix that. We're going to get our sheep into their pasture. We're going to create a pasture for dogs, and we'll get things migrated to where they're kind of going to be in the final fortress here. So here's our sheep pasture. Notice that I threw the other grazers in there as well. There should be enough grazing area in there now to support them for the duration that they're going to be in there, which is not long for the other grazers. We're going to add the birds to this domain down here so that they'll get removed from their cages. And with any luck, the blue peacock and the blue pea chick will happen to be a mated pair, and we'll start getting blue peahen eggs as well as the turkey eggs that we already have laid. It is now early winter. You'll notice we don't have any defenses set up. This is about as late as you really want to be setting defenses up, and at this point, I don't have any. Now's a real good time to start talking about how you can get that stuff up in a hurry. And the answer, as always, is to make it a parallel action. The simplest solution is to get your mason busy building blocks, and only blocks. So we're going to go ahead and cancel all of these thrones and tables below here, cancel that one, end the repeat on this, and he'll convert over to making just. Likewise, earlier we had a guy that we set on stone crafting. Yeah, he's now going to do masonry full time. We've got a bunch of haulers. We're going to make them into masons as well. And you might be going, well, wait a minute. These guys are going to start making blocks and they'll become masons, and we don't want that. Well, the way you get around it is actually pretty simple. You assign them all to be masons, but you don't allow little nooblet masons to work in the workshop. And the way you get around that is by assigning a manager. Right now, I don't need anybody in particular to manage job orders, but just having a manager is enough. So we're going to go ahead and make our broker also into our manager. You probably don't want to do this normally, but for right now, it's a nice workaround. It lets us set a workshop profile. Now you'll notice over here on the right, this workshop profile is now available. I'm going to go ahead and set a profile on that workshop, and I'm going to say, hey, if you're not at least a proficient mason, you can't work in this workshop. So all of our dabblers will stay out, and our highly skilled mason will make blocks whenever he's available. And we'll start building a curtain wall about 5 squares out from our current wall. You'll see our haulers come along momentarily, and they'll just, en masse, they'll just throw up a wall in basically no time at all. The catch is you have to have the blocks, and right now we don't have a whole lot of blocks to go around, so we need to get the blocks built. Our mason should be down here busying himself about the block making jobs, which is exactly what we want, and he'll start cranking out blocks 4 at a time. We probably want to go ahead right now and start doing this stuff in parallel. We've got a couple people to do masonry. We'll go ahead and get them doing masonry full time. I'll create multiple block jobs, and once we've got enough blocks, I'll go back to doing the stuff in parallel the same way I was before. Likewise, we're going to need some mechanisms for our drawbridges and levers. We'll go ahead and get those built. Our miners are also our mechanics, so they will go ahead, and a miner will show up here momentarily and take care of that job for us. And looking here, we've got idle peasants and an idle broker. I'm going to go ahead and let the broker, since I've already started him down the path of masonry, we're going to go ahead and make him a mason as well, and that way he'll take idle mason jobs whenever he has it one. And I'm going to cheat a little bit. Normally when I do this, I do it in a very aesthetic, symmetric pattern, and we're not going to do it this time. I'm going to go ahead and kill one of those mechanics workshops and make it into a mason's workshop so I can get 3 of them running at once. And our broker comes along, builds himself a new workshop, and then I'm going to put him to work in it. The penalty for having a bunch of finished goods sitting in a workshop, somebody was asking, you know, what does the clutter rating matter. It's significant. Potentially, it's wildly significant. Yeah, it can be vastly slower. Now, it depends on how much. A set of blocks sitting in a workshop is mostly irrelevant. But if, for example, I had a whale get moved to my butcher's shop and get butchered, and I didn't pick up the meat, I didn't pick up the bones, and then I moved an elephant in and I butchered the elephant, and then I moved another whale in, by the time that third whale arrives, this thing is going to have the maximum clutter rating, and it's going to take forever to finish butchering that animal. Yeah, butcher shop clutter is literally chaos. It can basically get to be the point where a dwarf eats, drinks, and finishes sleeping, goes immediately to the butcher shop, and it takes him so long to butcher the animal that as soon as he finishes butchering it, he passes out from not having had any sleep. Dwarves, as far as I know, won't pass out in the middle of a job, but as soon as that job is over, wham, he falls asleep. And if he hasn't eaten or drank in a while, well, he's going to sleep first, and then maybe he'll get up and go get some food later if he doesn't starve to death in his sleep. You want to avoid clutter. It's not essential that you avoid all clutter, but the more of it you have, the less efficiently you are working, and the penalty can grow to be enormous. Yeah, and once it all rots, there's, miasma everywhere, and you have to deal with it quickly, or all your dwarves are unhappy about the miasma and unhappy about not having any food. And okay, here he's asking about what he's going to export. And this tells us, if I want to maximize my profit, which is mostly a moot thing anyway, but let's treat it with the dignity it deserves, I could maximize my profit by creating these items, which he will buy above normal cost. So, for example, amulets, he's going to pay 183% of normal price. Windows, he'll pay 148%. Basically, the little slider on the right kind of indicates about what they're going to pay. Sometimes you can get them to pay almost, 200% for some items. Now, there's a couple of catches here. First off, any item that you can't directly control the production of, there's no point in worrying about it. So, say, for example, amulets. Amulets is not something I can tell my dwarves, hey, go make nothing but amulets. Amulets are part of another subcategory, and so they'll make some amulets, and they'll make some rings, and they'll make some necklaces, or whatever the hell the jewelry category includes, and I don't have any way to control them and make them just do amulets. Seeds, for example, I don't really want to sell seeds. Seeds aren't particularly valuable. The fact that you're going to pay almost double for a bag of seeds is mostly moot, because frankly I want to keep the seeds and grow plants out of them. They're more valuable to me as crops than they are valuable as trade goods. Large gems. You can't control large gems. When you cut gems, occasionally they're large gems and occasionally they're normal gems, and you have no way to define whether you're going to get a large gem or not. If you do, great, you can sell them for a bigger profit next time, but you can't really rely or bank on it. Some good things to look for in terms of sale goods are goblets, and which includes, I think, the stone mug category, because you can directly influence those. Instruments. If they're going to pay for serrated discs, I mean, you saw how valuable a serrated disc is. Now imagine that they're willing to pay double for it, and you make it out of something valuable, and you encrust it with gems. I don't even know if you can, but that's not really the point. You can imagine how valuable your goods eventually become, and you get to the point where, with the right type of trade good, in the right type of circumstance, you can buy out a whole caravan with, 2 or 3 of them. Far more valuable than you've even seen with those bronze discs I made for trade goods initially. Now, in this list here, most of this stuff is just not worth worrying about. I could theoretically build shields, but frankly, shields are worth more on my guys. I could make crossbows, but crossbows are worth more to me. Ammunition isn't particularly valuable. Quivers take leather. Seeds aren't valuable. Large gems I can't control. Pearlash means I'm burning up my wood for no good purpose. Tools includes rock pots and nest boxes and hives, and none of those are particularly valuable. Amulets can't be controlled. Cheese I could make, but of course I'm limited by how many animals I have. Windows require sand. So this category is pretty much a bust. He's not really going to offer us anything here that I really care about. That's okay. He'll buy all that other stuff. It's just he's telling us what he'll pay extra for, and frankly, if he's not paying extra for the stuff we want to sell, well, too bad for him. Okay, now he'll go ahead and say, "Hey, look, you gave us an import agreement, you gave us an export agreement. We're out of here." And he takes off, gone. When he leaves your fort, when he leaves, the one thing attaches to him. When he leaves, he will note your population. So right now, my population is 18 dwarves. If my population was at or above my cap, he would tell the mountain home to stop sending migrants. If it is below the cap, they will send migrants at least one more wave, possibly more. Those population caps are soft caps. They can be exceeded, but they will eventually cut off your migrant waves until you fall below the appropriate number. You'll notice that our record keeper, since we now have one assigned, or our broker, excuse me, since we now have one assigned, has started to identify the value of the objects in our fortress. And we're not getting exact counts yet. That's what these question marks are all about here. But our broker appraises that right now our fortress is worth just under 150,000 dwarf bucks. In order to improve the value or the accuracy of these values, we need to get a more skilled broker, and to improve the accuracy of these food store values and the values over here in the stocks screen, we need to get a record keeper. Record keepers and managers are a particular type of noble. They require an office to work in. Once you get them an office, there are additional follow-on features that they provide. So let's go ahead and get an office built for each one of those, and I happen to have a decent space for one right here for each one. Now, they don't need vast, fancy offices. This is more than enough space for each one of them. I will build each of them a separate office. I will get someone assigned as manager more permanently. I will get someone assigned as record keeper more permanently, and then we'll put them to work. So once that furniture is installed, we'll have what we need to actually make these into offices. You really only need the chair. I think if I'm going to build a dwarf a chair, I should at least give him a desk to go along with it. I'm kind of a hedonist that way, I guess. It's not necessary. A dwarf with a chair is all you need to make an office. The desk just adds to the value of the office. So now if I were to pull up the room display again, you see I have a modest office and a meager office. The quarters where we have our dormitory and the dining room is now considered fine because we've improved the quality of the room by adding more furniture to it. So on the left you have a meager office, and on the right you have a modest office, and now that they get some additional furniture installed, now they're both... Oh, no, one's still meager. It looks like the one on the left is the meager office. It doesn't have as much value in it, probably because the walls in the right-hand office are actually valuable ores. They're copper ores, so it's a little more valuable as an office. The value of an office for your manager and your record keeper is all but irrelevant. You really just don't care. We're going to assign dwarves to those tasks. Tosset is going to be our manager, at least for the foreseeable future, so let's go ahead and assign him to this cheap office that we don't care about. And then we're going to need to assign somebody to record keeping. And unlike managing, in my case, record keeping is usually a fairly full-time duty. He's going to be spending a lot of time updating records, and that means he's not going to be doing a lot of other things. So it's actually worthwhile to consider a dwarf that we probably don't want doing anything else. He's, not particularly skilled at something. This guy here, Cog, looks pretty good, and so does Udib here. And I think I'm going to take Udib because she's female, and keeping the females off the front line is good for all you folks who don't have children turned off like I do. So although I'll get children in my migration waves, I don't have to worry about Udib giving birth in the middle of battle. When the dwarves figure out how to keep pregnancies off their front lines of battle, we'll stop worrying about that problem. But for now, I just turn kids off, and it's okay for me to use Udib this way. That's the way you'd use her in a regular fortress anyway. And so Udib now has a room. Now, with Record Keeper, you're going to want to do something a little different. The bookkeeper position here is going to be Udib. There she is. Okay. Notice that unlike most of these things, there's nothing special you can do with them. But when you get down to bookkeeper, the settings key lights up, and the reason is because you have to determine how accurately you want your records to be recorded. In particular, what this basically means is if I'm on lowest precision, I get inaccurate counts as soon as I have more than 10 of an item. 11 to 20 is all going to be recorded as like 10 question mark. When I get to low precision, I'll have accurate counts until I breach 3 digits, and then all of a sudden I'll have 110 question mark or 100 question mark. When I get to medium precision, it's accurate up to 999, and then anything in 4 digits will be inaccurate. High precision gives you accuracy to 4 digits. Highest precision means everything in your fortress is going to be accurate all the time. Now, it doesn't take much record-keeping time, much time in the office, to get up to medium precision. So if you're doing a record keeper who has other tasks, you can get up to medium precision, which is more than you'll need for most things anyway. Your record keeper won't spend all that much time updating his records. He can be doing a couple of other things along the way. That's perfectly okay. If you have a dedicated, devoted record keeper who's doing nothing else, you might as well set them to highest precision and let them spend all their time in the office. Since I'm devoting UDIB exclusively to that, yeah, we're going to do that. Someone was asking if dwarves have ever given birth in battle. Not only do dwarves give birth in battle, they have a tendency to use their infants as shields with predictable bad consequences. If you don't have children turned off, this could happen to you. More accurately, it could happen to the infant. It has been the case that dwarves who go into battle pregnant, give birth in the middle, have their baby skewered by a goblin, thereby saving the mother's life, just so the mother can go berserk, butcher all the goblins, butcher all her squad mates, and then completely go berserk and go around butchering all of her citizens. Yeah, the fact that I have to worry about dwarves being pregnant in the military is one of the reasons why I turn pregnancies off. I don't mind if they bring dwarven children with them in their migration waves. But the mechanics for handling pregnancy and childcare in general, absolutely just not installed yet. So until Toady gets around to actually fixing those mechanics, you know what? I'm going to play the game the way I like to play it, and that means I don't have to worry about mom giving birth in the middle of a goblin siege while on the front lines, which frankly is just stupid. Yeah, Magmania Cup here is correct. If a dwarf gives birth, they'll cancel whatever job they were on right at that moment, and then at that point they'll throw the baby on their shoulder and go back to being normal. The problem is that if you've got somebody in your military who just gave birth, throwing your baby on your shoulder and going back to being normal could mean things like walking into a danger room where spikes are shooting out of the walls, or going out on the front lines of a siege and fighting off goblin weapon masters. Your baby who doesn't wear any armor tends not to survive that consequence, and there's where the problem kind of comes in. Once the dwarves invent childcare or contraceptives that don't involve me turning off children, I'll go back to allowing them. But until then, frankly, it's just a way to get more aggravation. Dwarf Fortress is more than aggravating enough. Okay, who's idle? We've got miners idle, we've got a couple of peasants idle. Looks like we're doing pretty good aside from that. You'll notice that UDIB is now updating stockpile records. So, for example, if I go back in here to Nobles and I go into the settings, hey look, we've already got medium precision. UDIB has been working for about 2 seconds and has already achieved medium precision. And she's almost to high precision already. Typically, the only things you're going to have enough of that you care about this level of precision are boulders. When you start mining out lots and lots of boulders, that's probably the only thing that will ever have so many of them that you're going to need high precision. Maybe once you get, a large population, I guess you could consider food. The difference between having 66,599 food and 66,598 food is not particularly, important in the grand scheme of things. But that's about the only point where you'll need to go into highest precision at all. It happens very quickly, so you can have a record keeper who is doing other tasks by assigning them a fairly low level of precision. You can get accurate enough results from that. Okay, now I recall our miners have pretty well mined out everything, but I noticed that our magma here has not continued to advance. And notice how there are a lot of 1s, but not a lot of 2s in that central chamber. This is what you end up with when you're trying to spread the magma out too far, and the last couple times I've done this, I've had to fix it. Notice the magma in that upper chamber, for example, keeps evaporating over and over again, and while there's an occasional 2 getting into the room, I'm losing more magma than I'm actually creating. Well, the fix for it is very simple. We build another magma tap. You build another magma tap by allowing the magma into the room, and in order to do this safely, you have to do all the work from a level above where the magma is, because magma won't flood up, remember? So the first thing we do is we dig where we're going to dig. We're going to punch a hole in this wall and allow magma in. So we have to dig above it so that we can punch the hole from above. On the level below it, we will actually dig the magma tunnel, just as we did with the other magma tap previously. Now, as long as I don't actually punch the hole in this wall or that northern wall on this floor, my dwarves can excavate these new magma taps safely. There's no magma that's going to flow into them until I'm ready. So I can go ahead and let them do all the excavation of these these new magma pipes that I'm creating that will get the magma flowing into our vast magma storage chamber over here. That will tie up pretty much all of our miners for a long time at this point, so I can let them do their thing, and I can go see what else we've got running. It looks like we've got a bunch of idle peasants who aren't really doing a whole lot for us. Let's start talking about prepared meals. I actually create prepared meals. I find them incredibly valuable for maintaining dwarven mood, and you can actually get high-value trade goods from creating dwarven meals. So let's take this guy here and make him into, actually let's do that person there and make them into a kitchen worker. My kitchen workers have a slightly different set of tasks. You'll notice they also do farming, for example. They'll do brewing and they'll do plant gathering sometimes, but I usually turn that off. One thing we haven't done yet that we need to is we need to get this guy and make sure he's got the crops that we care about. You can see them down here on the list. The kitchen area of the main menu is where you control whether something is cooked or brewed. So, for example, if I want plump helmets never to be used by my kitchen, I can turn them off. Generally speaking, you never want to cook plants. You probably don't want to cook most of your booze either, because you'll want to use it for drinking at first. Later on, when you have lots and lots of booze, booze makes a perfectly good food additive. Eggs, as I mentioned earlier, can be a massive source of food. Once you get turkeys up and running and peahens up and running and geese up and running, you can make lavish meals out of nothing but eggs that have vast stack sizes and can just, drown your dwarves in food. Personally, I like to, play it straight and have a lot of variety in terms of what I allow my dwarves to have. I don't just rely on only turkey eggs or only plump helmets, for example. But there's nothing that stops you from doing it. Do be aware that if you cook plants, plump helmets, pigtails, cave wheat, that does not produce a seed, which means that that plant is effectively wasted in terms of being able to replant it. Brewing, milling, processing, eating, any plant, you're okay. That produces a seed, the seed goes back in the stockpile allows you to replant that seed, you're perfect. If you cook plants, however, they're gone. That seed is gone, the plant is gone. If you needed it, you just cooked it. So be careful about cooking plants. Generally speaking, I don't cook plants except for the types of plants I don't care about. I do, however, brew them, and I use that to get rid of the ones that I don't care about and convert them to seeds and then just forget about them at that point. Now, one thing we didn't do earlier, I talked about getting surface plants of particular types that we want. In particular, I want fisher berries. I just like fisher berries. There's no particularly special value to them. And I also want rope reeds. And the reason I want rope reeds is because rope reeds are actually better at making cloth than pigtails that the dwarves bring with them. They do actually make a superior cloth growing item because they can be grown in 4 seasons as opposed to the dwarves' pigtails only being able to be grown in 2. That's not to say you have to have these plants. You can certainly get by on pigtails just fine. Personally, though, I like to be able to produce stuff in bulk, and that means being able to do it as many seasons as possible, and that means rope reeds. Additionally, we'd like to get some wild strawberries for variety. There's probably some other plant types out here we're probably going to want to snag at some point, but for right now, we've got a marginally skilled gatherer. Let's see if we can get some pigtails or some rope reeds going, and if we can get the rope reeds into our stockpile, then we'll have cloth manufacture basically in the bag, if you will forgive my pun. Our gatherer is off and doing his thing. Our farmers are planting seeds. Our kitchen workers are brewing drinks. We have 372 drinks. See, at this point, our record keeper has started to get accurate. So now, instead of getting rough counts with question marks, we start getting accurate counts in here. And if I go into the stock screen, you'll notice that all of my counts are now accurate on all of these items. I can tell you I have 921 boulders and exactly how many of each type I have. Hey, look, I have hidden ones and forbidden ones. Remember earlier when we marked those stuff forbidden on the mine level? Well, here it is. It's all hidden and forbidden, and there it is right there. In addition, you can see things like, for example, how many units of cloth I have and how many tanned leather hides I have, how much thread, how many logs, and so forth. If you're looking to monitor your supplies, the stocks screen is where you do it, but you can't start really monitoring your stocks until you have a record keeper. And frankly, early in the very early portion of your fortress, you simply don't have enough dwarves to devote somebody exclusively to record keeping. You might have them do it at a low level of accuracy just to give you some accurate counts on the low levels of goods you have at that point anyway, and slowly advance their level of accuracy as you go. That's up to you. Personally, I just wait until I have a few more dwarves and then have them do it all at once, and as you can see, it doesn't really impact you early on anyway. Now, you might be wondering, say for example for beds, it shows I have 16 beds, but only 1 listed on the left column, and what that is I have 16 installed beds and 1 loose bed floating around somewhere. These are the different beds that are installed. While you're in here, you can actually go over here to the mode, and for example, I can expand this out and see what types of beds I have. So here's a compressed list that lists the types together, and then when you expand it, that lists how many of each type and their respective qualities. Red numbers, for example, are blocks. These are blocks that are used up. I have 107 blocks that are built into workshops, built into floors, built into walls, built into bridges, and so forth. I have 49 stones that I built into something. I have 3 logs that I built into something. These are probably the logs from the wagon at this point. I have 65 thread that's been used up for something somewhere. Maybe it's in a bin. I don't remember. Leg wear, armor, ammunition, and so forth. All of these things are probably being stored somewhere in a bin, maybe. In the case of stones don't actually go in a bin. So the only way they could be in something is if they've been used to build something. Or they could be sitting inside a workshop being ready to be used. Forbidden and hidden items, I don't know if I showed you, or I don't know if everybody caught it. If I compress this view momentarily, all of that phyllite and cobaltite that was in the forge magma area, the hidden stuff shows that I have some hidden, some forbidden items here. You can forbid items directly from the stocks screen. You can go over here and say, oh, I want to forbid all of my dacite. And the second I hit forbid, every dacite stone anywhere in the fortress that I know about is instantly forbidden at that point. Regardless of where it is, I don't have to find it, I don't have to locate it, I don't even have to care, I just can mark it forbidden. That might be important if you have a limited supply of a stone like flux, for example, and you want to make absolutely sure that right this moment, all of that stuff gets forbidden and never touched until you're ready to use it. I could mark all my dacite for dumping and it would end up in my refuse pile. I could mark my copper nuggets, for example, for dumping and get them moved from wherever they are into the refuse pile and then go back and reclaim them later. I'm not going to do that in this case, but I could. Now, our forge areas have started to fill with magma. And like I said earlier, it's not going to fill up the way we want it to, so we're probably going to have to retap it. Let's see where our miners have gotten on to. Have they started digging this out yet? No, it doesn't look like they have. We'll unpause it and give them a little more time to work. There'll be a bit of a momentary delay here while the miners get around to digging out those access paths. But I didn't actually connect this stuff up. Now remember what I said earlier. Your dwarves actually won't have magma flood up their staircases. So one trick I can pull here is I can connect this magma tap directly to the access path, and it won't hurt anything because the magma won't flood up out of the volcano suddenly and come flooding up over the top. What it will do is allow the dwarves to immediately access and start digging down those taps that I've created. If you forbid your day site and then mine more and a loose day site is created, it is not automatically forbidden. It only forbids the day site that's on the map at that point. If you want to continue to forbid your day site, that's where you would get into the stones menu. And typically I don't mess with this, but you could go in here and you could add a stone to the economic tasks. So for example, lignite currently is restricted to not being used except to make coke. If I set lignite to be green, lignite can be used to make blocks, lignite can be used to make furniture, lignite can be used for all these other tasks. Typically, if something is forbidden, you want to leave it forbidden. There's only a limited types of stones in here, but it is possible through raw editing to add them. I can't really think of any reason why you necessarily want to forbid all of a given type of stone, but if you want to restrict your mason, for example, I guess, to color coordinate your furniture, you could certainly do that, I guess, by doing it. But frankly, at that point, I probably would be doing my furniture out of metal because I can more accurately control what I'm creating anyway. Quality ratings, as we were looking at earlier, I didn't actually cover that. I started to, and I shifted away from it. Let's look at those beds again real fast. At this point, our carpenter has been working for a while, and when he first started, he was making, cheap beds over here. You can see there's a palm bed here that has no quality, and a tower cat bed that has no quality, and then a first level quality item. He started to get better and better, and then he got a little better, and he got a little better, and suddenly he's starting to make really high quality items. So here's a pine bed that's level 2, and then he gets up into level 3 and 4 and so forth. Eventually he'll start cranking out masterpieces. We may already have some masterpieces in the dormitory. The higher quality an item is, for items that have quality, do make dwarves happier. So a masterpiece bed is better than a fine bed, is better than a no quality bed. All beds perform just like dwarves at a base rate. The no quality bed is perfectly functional and serviceable as a bed. It will create a happy thought for having slept in the dwarf's bedroom, but he won't admire a no quality bed. So if he sleeps in his bedroom, he'll get slept in his own bed. That's a base level thought. If he slept in his bed and it was also a masterwork bed, it will say something like he slept in his own masterful bed or his own fine bed, and that's actually a more powerful happy thought that will offset those negative thoughts. You can restrict quality items for those items that have quality in stockpiles. I'll use that typically once I start getting artifacts. I'll actually create a vault whose sole function is to contain artifacts that I'm not going to build somewhere. If I get an artifact bed, I'll probably build it in the dormitory or build it in the dining room or build it in some noble's quarters somewhere, whatever. But so that people can look at it and admire it. But if I get an artifact flute, there's not much I can do with an artifact flute. So I'll build a vault room whose sole function is to store artifacts. I'll create a stockpile that takes only artifacts of all the various types, and my artifacts will get moved to stockpiles in that area, and then at that point they're going to just reside there for all time at that point. It is correct to note that higher quality weapons and armor do perform better. There's an increase all the way up to masterwork. There's an increase for artifacts, but don't rely on artifact weapons and furniture or weapons and armor. While they're nice, you're probably not going to have that many of them, and so expecting to outfit your entire squad in artifact armor, for example, and artifact weapons starts to get very absurd very quickly unless you're recycling your legendary weaponsmiths and armor smiths in order to create more of them to get more moods later down the road. Generally speaking, dwarves will prefer higher quality items. In some cases, they will automatically upgrade their items to the higher quality variety when they are available. So, for example, if a dwarf has a lower quality item of armor and he notices that there's a better one in the stockpile, he'll actually go and upgrade his armor and go straight back to using the the higher quality item. Yeah, Alan, you were asking about the magma. You'll notice that although it's more than it was in this room, more than it was earlier, it's still not really filling up that those side chambers, and so I'm going to hurry the process along a little bit and add a couple of magma taps to our setup here. Okay, now I created a kitchen worker, but I didn't actually give him a job, and by now he's already created his, he's already built his workshops. Let's get him doing something useful. Our dining room is right here. We don't currently have a stockpile for them, so let's go ahead and get a stockpile whose sole function is prepared meal. Okay, this stockpile will take only prepared meals. No other food will ever get migrated here. In fact, I don't remember if I set prepared meals in the main stockpile or not, but if I did, I'm going to have it take them and move them down to this stockpile because this is where I want them. This will keep my prepared meals separate from my other raw food. The answer to why I need so much magma, I'll show you when I'm done, but I actually perform my smelting operations in my glass making operations and my ceramics making operations in parallel. What we'll end up with here in the magma chambers, and I need to seal the caverns off while I'm thinking about it, we'll have forges in the center. There will be 8 forges. We will have 9 smelters in this room. We will have 9 magma furnaces, or 9 magma kilns in this room. We will have 9 magma glass furnaces in this room. At this extra room, I can then either use for bars and blocks, or I can build more smelters, or I can build more forges, whatever I happen to need. I do this stuff in parallel, so I will have 9 haulers, for example, all smelting iron into bars at the same time. You can, for jobs that don't require that don't provide extra quality, generally speaking, I find that I really just want volume from those jobs, and the easiest way to get volume is not to train one guy indefinitely and then train another guy indefinitely. It's simply to go ahead and just slap out. Yeah, you could, and you can do that, but darn it, look at it. It's pretty. It's pretty, man. Magmania Cup is correct. You could dig just the exact areas I needed for magma, and you would get a couple of little V-shaped channels here, for example, a couple of little lines here in the middle of the center. That's okay. When we start building traps, you're going to need to know how to control and add to your magma flow when you find out that, hey, this trap I'm going to use to dump magma on my goblins is wonderful, but it doesn't fill up as fast as I'd like. What do I do? Well, the answer is you build another tap. We have a volcano that comes up to the surface, is how we've gotten so far to the surface. There's the surface, there's our volcano. We're just dropping the magma down a few levels in order to pump it into storage chambers. I'm at a volcano. Volcanoes are a much more newbie-friendly kind of site. They provide a little more of your resources on site. You don't require a volcano to be noob-friendly. You simply need to be aware that there's magma at the bottom of the world if you need it. You can simply run straight to the bottom of the world and build your forges down there perfectly fine. I've done that before. I've done it again. I'll do it on other maps. For my purposes today, it was easier just not to have to deal with that initially, since I'm showing folks how to get a fortress up and running. It's not essential. It's just nice. Need to make sure we seal up our caverns, remember? Okay, we said we were going to get a furniture stockpile, and we never did that, so let's... And at this point, since I now have a furniture stockpile, I disable all furniture in the temporary stockpile, and that stuff will get moved down to the stockpile where I want to store it permanently. We need to get cloth and leather working areas built, and I think we already have the area mined out. We just haven't actually built the workshops for it. Let's take a look real fast. Sure enough, we do. And we'll turn off leather and cloth in the temporary stockpile since we now have an area for those. So as you can see, steadily we're dwindling down these categories of items that are stored in this temporary stockpile. Our barracks will take weapons, armor, trap components, ammo, and get those moved down below. At that point, we'll be down to bars and blocks, which will be stored in our forge area, gems, which will be stored in our jewelry area, and finished goods, which will be stored near our eventual underground depot. At that point, the only thing left is animal storage, which is just cages and empty cages. And I'll probably have that storage very near the depot because it will also be near the entrance at that point. That'll be animals that we import, that'll be goblins that we capture, and so at that point this temporary stockpile will be consumed and there won't be anything left that's actually being stored in it. Now at this point, we've actually got some of these plants that we wanted to get from the surface down onto our temporary, or into our underground area. It's time to start planting these plots as well. Typically I will run multiple plots of rope reeds, so we'll probably do that year-round on one plot at least. And then we'll do other plots for various types. So for example, I'll do fisher berries until I can get sunberries or whipvines. And then we'll probably do rope reeds for the remainder. There's no particular value to having, say, fisher berries above rope reeds, except that you can eat fisher berries, and rope reeds can be made into cloth. Wild strawberries, fisher berries, and prickleberries are all, for all intents and purposes, the same product. They're different, but the fact that you're doing prickleberries a couple of seasons and wild strawberries a couple of seasons, all you're getting is variety out of it. There's no particular benefit to one over the other. Whereas with the rope reeds, in particular, I'm getting away with a larger cloth production than I would normally get from pigtails. Okay, and with all of our quote-unquote above-ground farm plots now ready to produce those types of plants, we'll start getting those planted as well. We've got most of those, but there's a few types of plants I didn't notice in our list, and I do want a couple of them. The Phoebus tile set, I don't know if I had mentioned this earlier, allows me to distinguish what the types of plants I'm getting ready to pick are. I don't actually think you can do that in Vanilla Dwarf Fortress. I believe wild strawberries look just like prickleberries, look just like other types of shrubs. I can tell, for example, that these yellow grasses here are actually longland grass, and since that's the type of plant I'm looking for at the moment, I can send my gatherer out to pick just those. Now, we've had our turkeys hatch, but remember, turkeys don't get assigned automatically to the pasture, so all of our turkeys are now running amok all over our fortress, and we didn't create a door, so there's nothing keeping them in, and we have to get them all assigned back to the pasture. As with other things, you'll notice that there's a DF hack filtering option here. That's not in Dwarf Fortress by default, but I can filter out the things that are in pastures. So when I hit P, it says, hey, I only want to see the stuff that's not already in a pasture. And as it happens, that's all the turkeys that we've made along the way. So I can just go ahead and safely pasture everything here and know that it's all going to end up in the turkey/bird pasture. We'll cage those animals here in a bit. We'll build a cage inside the turkey area and build a maturing cage where we can keep our turkeys until they're of proper size, and that'll take care of the turkeys. Any idlers we have at this point will start jamming turkeys back into the pasture. The turkeys will tend to migrate to the pasture on their own. You'll see a brief flurry of activity as birds start getting assigned to the pasture, and then at that point they won't leave that room anymore. They are effectively in the box forever. We have a stone crafter who needs more jobs to do. Let's go ahead and get him working. Instruments and mugs are only for trade goods. They serve no function other than there is a way to do that, I think, in DF Hack. I think you can auto pasture your animals if you tell it what animals to pasture. You can auto nest box by, if you custom build a single tile pasture above a nest box, DF Hack has a tool that will automatically assign female birds to nest box pastures that are 1 by 1, and so they will automatically be assigned to a pasture directly on a nest box, and they will effectively never move again. They will basically just go to their nest box and never be allowed to move from that space. There's not really a good way for me to do it. I'm sure that if I looked around long enough, I'd find a DF Hack, tool for it, but button meshing is pretty much it. It's not as bad as trying to assign dwarf labors, so I've kind of overlooked it. I haven't really been looking for a better solution. If one of you comes across one, by all means, mention it to me. I'm more than happy to learn new tricks as I go along. We're going to build mugs and instruments specifically for their trade good purpose. They don't serve any purpose in my fortress other than to be encrusted by gems and studded with metal and then sold to somebody to pick up trade goods. Rock pots, however, are used to store food and booze, so we'll be using those as our primary storage methods. At this point, I want to double check, but I think our basins are probably getting fairly skilled here. Oh, I've had the game on pause a lot, so maybe not. We can check on how many blocks we've got in the stockpile here. Let's see, rough gems blocks. We've got about 300 blocks, which should be enough, I think, to get the curtain wall up and built. Let's unpause the game and let it run while I do this, because it's going to pause as soon as I start building the wall anyway.